Well, welcome back, everybody. This is Stephen Howard, another episode of Discussions on Great Leadership. I've got a wonderful guest today. I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. I think we have a lot in common. We're both authors. But Bill Welter has been a consulting educator with over 50 years experience, spanning 4 separate careers: military, engineering, consulting, and education. He's a founding principal of Mind Prep Resource Center, which is a business that helps leaders and professionals become better thinkers and better leaders. And he's written 5 books. One of which I haven't read yet, but I want to read, is called The Prepared Mind of a Leader: 8 Skills Leaders Use to Innovate, Make Decisions, and Solve Problems. And his most recent book is Demystifying Business Strategy, published a couple of years ago. Bill, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. This is great.
I look forward to it. I wrote a book about better decisions, better thinking, better outcomes. So I want to really hear what your thoughts are about better thinking and leaders. But first, everyone gets the first question, Bill. And that question is, what does the term great leader or great leadership mean to you?
Okay. So you mentioned my 4 careers, and my first career was in the Marine Corps. And my claim to fame is I went in as a private. I had a chance to go to officers candidate school, and I got out as a captain. So I was on both sides of the leadership issue. When I got commissioned as a Brown Bar second lieutenant after a few years in the Corps, my father, who was an old World War II sergeant, came to my commissioning, and I'm expecting the old Sarge to give me a good snappy salute, because now I outrank him. And instead, he went into father mode, and he started poking his finger into my chest, and he says, "Your only job is to take care of your troops, and they'll take care of you." That little advice from my father got me through Vietnam, got me through my engineering career, it got me through a bunch of other things. So the essence to me of great leadership is you take care of your troops.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Particularly in today's world, I think even more important, wouldn't you say, with the lockdowns and the pandemic?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it's just amazing. And the thing that upsets me is so many people think that they're a leader because of their position on an org chart.
Right.
I'm sorry. I disagree. You can be a leader at any level of the organization. You just take care of the people around you, and then they look to you and they help you. It's as simple as that.
Would you have 2 or 3 pieces of advice for our audience on how to take care of your people? What comes to mind, the 2 or 3 most important things?
Oh, number 1 is listen to them.
Okay.
That's number 1. Number 2 also came out of kind of my experience in Vietnam, and that is pay attention to the boots on the ground. Pay attention to the people who are actually there. So if I put that into the current world of retail and things like that, you may be a big shot, but I would spend some time listening to people who are on the front lines and who are, talking to customers and just they're in the real world.
Right.
Too many executives tend to be in the world of summarized data, and that's kind of never land as far as I'm concerned.
I totally agree. When I think of this, I don't think of retail. I think about the airline industry, having traveled so much throughout my career, and the terrible experiences that we often get in the aviation industry, and the leaders they're oblivious to it, quite frankly.
It was kind of fascinating. A number of years ago, I had a chance. So in my consulting career, I did a bunch of consulting work at Boeing. And at one point, Boeing was putting together a 1 million square foot sheet metal facility. And we just called it the pots and pans facility because it wasn't structural sheet metal. It was for all the cabin stuff that went in there. Okay. They did something quite brilliant. And the brilliant piece was, after they put together their plan, they got a cross section of the employees, from vice presidents down through janitors. And they said, go look at this plan. And it put them behind, theoretically, a number of months, but it picked up so much speed because the people who actually had to live in the plant had a chance to look at it first, and it made a big, big difference.
Hmm.
So there's a story of the real world again, and airplanes as opposed to airlines.
All right, so I'm fascinated. So you deal with, you say you help leaders learn from the past, deal with today, prepare for the future. What lessons from the past do you think have been helpful in getting through the pandemic and getting us out of the pandemic?
Oh, well, here's the problem. I don't think we learned from the past.
Okay.
I think we don't, and if you went to the recent past, countries around the world acted as if COVID-19 was a surprise. But in 2018, we had outbreaks of Zika, we had outbreaks of MERS, we had outbreaks of Ebola. It was around the world, and there was a whole bunch of people at governmental levels who basically said, oh, it'll never happen here. We just don't learn from the past enough as we should. So to help people learn from the past, though, I think we need to literally study the past. So, when you look at that, one of the best things to do, I think, is to go back and say, let's spend some time looking at history and studying it. Unfortunately, people who are in business, oftentimes it's like, well, I got my degree in finance, I got my degree in marketing. What the heck would I want a degree in history for? But we may want to pay attention to history. It's there. We need to study it. We need to actually pay attention to it.
What about organizational history? Do you think leaders should study organizational history as well?
I think they should. I think what we should be doing is kind of paying attention to what has worked and what has not worked in the past. If we go back and we think in terms of some of the great stories that are sitting out there from organizational history, we can see from the Greeks all the way through the early 20th century through today, people have made mistakes, but people have done some good stuff as well. We look at the genius of Edison, but the reality is that Edison had a laboratory behind him. His genius he wasn't sitting there alone. He had a lot of people with him. We should look at how some of the people that were successful in the past actually got there, aside from all of the PR stuff that's out there.
I wonder where the next Blockbuster is going to be. I mean, Blockbuster turned down the opportunity to buy Netflix 2 decades ago or something. And I wonder what the next Blockbuster type story is going to be.
Right. Or in the world of technology, remember, you're old enough to have had a Crackberry at one point in time, the BlackBerry.
Yes.
Apple announced the iPhone. They didn't even think that was a competitor because it was so different.
Right. Yeah, and Motorola with their big phones and then their clamshells. Well, all this has to do with the way we think, the way we make decisions. So tell me, how do you get leaders to change their mindset to prepare for the future?
Wow. Okay. Let me go off onto a little bit of a tangent here. So the book that you keep saying you should read, and it was the one that came out in 2006, The Prepared Mind of a Leader. So here's the quick backstory on that. I had been in the consulting world at that time. I had business cards with Ernst on them. So I had an Ernst & Ernst business card, an Ernst & Winnie business card. I left them for 10 years. I came back at Ernst & Young. In my consulting career, at Ernst and at a smaller boutique firm, I used to sometimes wonder, why am I sitting in this conference room? Now I look across the table and I say, you know what? She's got an MBA from Stanford. She's smarter than me. He's got an MBA from Harvard. He's smarter than me. Why do they need help? And then I came across the quote from Louis Pasteur, the French microbiologist. At one point, he was accused of being lucky. He dealt with anthrax. He dealt with rabies. He dealt with silkworm disease. He's my hero because he saved the beer industry in Europe. And at one point, he was accused of being lucky. And he said, I was lucky, but I was ready for it. Chance favors the prepared mind. And I used to wonder, what is that? So I put together some thoughts on that, and I looked at leaders, past and present, and I said, all right, so here's a bunch of skills that are sitting out there. And the book is all around 8 skills, and we don't have time to go through all 8 of them, but I'll tell you the 3 that are most underutilized. First of all 8 skills are people, when I do workshops, people say, well, that's obvious. And then I say, which ones aren't used here? Literally around the world. So I've asked this question in the United States, in South America, in Europe, and in China. I get pretty much the same three answers. So this is not a study, but this is a lot of 100 times of doing anecdotal stuff adds up to something. We don't imagine enough.
Okay.
We don't reflect enough. And we don't challenge enough. So when you go to your question of thinking, one of the issues is let that 8-year-old kid that's in the back of your head loose every once in a while. Imagination is a powerful thing, especially when you think about strategy. I mean, strategy is all about doing things differently or doing different things. Keyword different, key skill, imagination. And we want innovation, but we kind of want it exact. Well, imagination is what we need at that point. Reflecting enough. Here's a key piece in an issue of leadership. You go back and you look at either a success or a failure, especially a failure, and say, what was my role in that? And the problem that we have with too many organizations is that we always try to figure out, who should I blame for this?
Right.
Sorry, what was your role in that? And sometimes reflection is a very uncomfortable thing. Quick side note, at one point in my career, I fired somebody. It took me 10 years to realize he screwed up because of me. He didn't screw up because of him. It was a very painful time of sitting back and saying, it was my fault. And I destroyed a friendship, and to this day, he won't talk to me, and it's my fault. Right. So the third one then is challenge. And that's a two-sided coin. One of them is you've got to be able to challenge the status quo inside of your organization. You can't simply saying, well, we got to do this because we've always done this. And then the flip side of that is you have to be willing to be challenged. It's not just the issue of reasoning. It's not just a question of putting together dots. We have to go and say, what assumptions have I made that need to be re-challenged? Here's a history piece for you. I grew up in the Chicago area. I used to live 10 miles from the headquarters of the least relevant retailer in the United States today. And that would be Sears Roebuck and Company. Right. I mean, they were the Amazon of their day.
Yes.
You could get anything, including a house from Sears. But they didn't challenge their basic business model of we understand and appeal to middle-class America. They kept going straight, and middle-class America changed. Yep. They didn't change along with middle-class America. So they should have been challenging their own business model at that point in time.
Yeah, there's so many good examples like that. That's great insights, Bill. One final question for you. What's one leadership practice that you keep at the forefront of your mind all the time?
Boy, I'm going to give you two. One's more important than the other. The first one is pay attention to your stakeholders. And stakeholders are the people who can affect or will be affected by your decisions. Quick side story. I was doing an implementation of a system inside of a manufacturing plant, and I was given an explanation of the data and the screen layouts and all the rest of this stuff. At break, an older working supervisor came walking up to me, and she grabbed me by my tie, pulled me down to her face level. She was about 5 foot. And she said, you're talking about a stupid computer, and you're changing the way I've made my living for 25 years. Talk to me about my job. Stakeholder. She wasn't the CEO. She wasn't the vice president. She was the lady who's going to have to use this stupid system that we thought was great, but we didn't think about changing her point of, her job. So stakeholders is number one. I think the other leadership issue is number two, is every solution creates a problem. So it's a systems thinking truism, but you put a solution in place. Now the question is, what else are you going to get? And the story I've told for years is, at one point in time, I was involved with putting in a high potential program for an organization. And then, for the hypo employees, it's like they get more time with the executives, they get more training, on and on. They get treated right, and it's good for them. There's a bunch of people inside of the organization that are turning around and saying, what the heck? What about me? And what you've done is you've created a solution to help some people, but you've created a problem with regard to morale for some other people. So pay attention to stakeholders. Pay attention to the unintended consequences.
Excellent. Well, my guest today has been Bill Welter from Colorado. Really appreciate your time today. If you enjoyed our show, please hit the like button below And be sure to subscribe, and you'll get notified when we do the next discussions on great leadership. Thank you, Bill.
Have a great day.